MotoGP is all about pushing boundaries, right? Speed, risk, and raw ambition. So why is it that when someone actually does push the limits, they're punished for it? Enter the Aprilia RS Cube. A bike so ahead of its time, it broke all the rules, and somehow became MotoGP's biggest mistake. Or was it? It was fast, dangerous, and unstable, but it changed the sport forever. Maybe the real mistake wasn't the bike, but how everyone reacted when things went wrong. In the early 2000s, Aprilia wasn't looking to play catch-up. They didn't want to just match Honda, Yamaha, or Suzuki. They aimed to beat them. To do that, they brought in Cosworth, legends of Formula One engineering, to help create a machine that would push the limits of MotoGP. The result was the 990cc Aprilia RS Cube, a bike loaded with cutting-edge F1 technology, including pneumatic valves, ride-by-wire throttle, and traction control. It looked futuristic, with a frame that seemed straight out of a sci-fi movie. On paper, it was a masterpiece. On the track, however, it didn't quite live up to expectations. Let's talk about the reality of the RS Cube. It was a nightmare. The bike was impossible to control. Colin Edwards, one of the riders tasked with testing and developing the bike, didn't mince words. He called it exactly how it was. This bike was born bad. The electronics, glitchy. The throttle, unpredictable. And the frame. It couldn't handle the raw power of the 220 horsepower engine. It was unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous. But here's the twist. Isn't that exactly what we want from innovation? Sure, it was messy. Sure, it was dangerous. But if you're not willing to take risks, how can you ever innovate? The fire at Sachsenring, which burned Aprilia's RS Cube during a test. That wasn't just a technical failure, it was a wake-up call. It showed that MotoGP needed to stop playing it safe and start embracing true innovation. The RS Cube wasn't the failure, it was the catalyst for a much-needed shift in the sport. But here's the kicker, the backlash wasn't just against the bike, it was against the very idea of innovation. The other manufacturers, including Honda and Yamaha, were happy to continue with their reliable, safer, and ultimately predictable designs. While Aprilia was stuck licking its wounds, Honda, Yamaha, and Suzuki carried on their steady path to dominance. Aprilia's failure didn't just affect their own ambitions, it stagnated the sport for years. It became a turning point in MotoGP, one that held the sport back from real progress. Now, let's talk about what came next. After the RS Cube's fiery collapse, the sport didn't just forget about it. No, engineers, designers, and innovators took those failures and used them to push MotoGP forward. That tech that seemed so out of place at the time. Pneumatic valves, ride-by-wire throttle, traction control. Those were all elements that would eventually be perfected and adopted in modern MotoGP. So, while the RS Cube itself didn't succeed, it set the stage for the bikes we see on track today. It was the beginning of a technological revolution in MotoGP. The question isn't whether the RS Cube failed. The real question is, why didn't we appreciate it for what it was?
Quattro tempi anche il francese Laconi che quest'anno
A test, a lesson in risk-taking, and a vision of what the future could look like. But here's the thing, the RS Cube wasn't a disaster, it was simply too far ahead of its time. It was a step forward that the sport wasn't quite ready for, and as a result, it got buried. But think about it, what if MotoGP had been willing to embrace the RS Cube? What if they had accepted failure as a part of the journey? How much further could the sport have progressed? Instead, we saw a few years of stagnation. Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and others went down the safe path, improving reliability but not pushing for radical change. The sport wasn't advancing, it was holding back. Look at today's MotoGP bikes. They've learned from the past, and the RS Cube played a big role in that. Was the RS Cube MotoGP's biggest mistake? Maybe, yes. But was it the mistake? Absolutely not. It was the spark that started a fire. The fire that eventually gave birth to the bikes we race today. Do you think the RS Cube was ahead of its time, or just a disaster waiting to happen? That's the real question. Drop your thoughts below, and if you love the history of MotoGP, want to hear more about the wildest moments, hit that like button and subscribe. Catch you at the next race.